The illusion of time. When one enters their 20s, there is a false sweetness that surrounds these years. A man or woman at this stage imagines life as an endless expanse, a horizon that stretches without limit. Each day feels like a grain of sand in an infinite desert, insignificant, replaceable, and easily wasted. This illusion is the most dangerous poison of youth, for it persuades you to trade your greatest wealth, time, for trivial pleasures and fleeting comfort. The lie is simple yet seductive. You are still young. There is time for everything later. With this whisper, days turn to months and months to years, until the decade is gone, and the foundation of your life is either built upon stone or left to rot upon sand. The greatest trap of the 20s is not failure. Failure sharpens a man if he is willing to learn. The true trap is delay, the illusion that tomorrow will always arrive, and that tomorrow will always offer the same chances as today. The world deceives you with slogans. You are still young, you can explore, you can waste, you can wait. But every wasted year cements habits, and habits become chains that no strength can easily break. The man who spends his 20s in distraction finds himself in his 30s with a mind dulled, a spirit weakened, and a body already betraying him. He believed he was rich with time, and yet he has spent himself into poverty without ever knowing it. Those who squander these years often console themselves with the illusion of endless recovery. They say, I will start later, I will build later, I will discipline myself later. But later is a coward's word, a promise never meant to be kept. Later is the wine of the weak, intoxicating enough to keep them passive, yet poisonous enough to ensure they never rise. A man who postpones his duty in his 20s discovers that he has postponed his entire life. Understand this truth: time in your 20s is not equal to time in your 30s or 40s. A single year in youth carries more weight than 5 years later. The energy you possess, the hunger that can be cultivated, the adaptability of the mind, these are resources that decay with age. To waste them in idleness or shallow pursuits is not merely foolish, it is self-destruction. Those who live wisely in their 20s multiply their strength tenfold, for the habits they forge become allies in every battle that follows. Those who live foolishly diminish themselves, and when they finally awaken, they must fight not only the world, but the weaknesses they have nurtured within. The illusion of time makes men slaves to pleasure. When you believe there is always another day, indulgence feels justified. Nights are surrendered to intoxication, mornings to recovery, afternoons to lethargy. A man convinces himself that this is harmless, that life is meant to be enjoyed. But enjoyment without measure transforms into enslavement. Each wasted night is not just a moment lost, but a brick removed from the fortress of one's future. The man who spends his 20s in perpetual pleasure discovers that pleasure itself becomes dull, requiring more excess to feel the same satisfaction, until nothing excites him but ruin. There is another cruelty within the illusion of time: comparison. The young man looks around and sees others equally distracted, equally careless, and he feels comfort in their company. If all are wasting, then it must not matter. But mediocrity multiplies in groups, and it is only when he encounters someone who has used their 20s with cunning discipline that the truth reveals itself. He sees one who has already built wealth, mastered a skill, or forged influence, and suddenly he realizes he has been running in circles while another has been marching forward. In that moment, jealousy burns, but jealousy cannot recover what negligence has lost. The illusion of time also blinds men to the cost of inaction. They think in terms of opportunities they might gain in the future, but they rarely consider the opportunities forever lost in the present. A door once closed does not always reopen. A network unbuilt in youth will not wait for you. A skill ignored will cost 10 times more effort to acquire later. The man who believes there is endless time is a gambler who bets against the laws of nature. And nature, indifferent and merciless, always collects her debt. The wise understand that time is not an infinite resource, but the most fragile, the most vanishing, and the most merciless of all possessions. A man may recover wealth, rebuild alliances, and restore reputation, but no man has ever recovered his lost 20s. When the decade ends, it does not return. The seasons of life change whether you are ready or not. The world rewards those who use the spring of their life to sow seeds, and it punishes those who wasted it believing spring would last forever. Thus, the illusion of time is not simply ignorance. It is a form of weakness imposed by society, culture, and one's own indulgence. Parents may tell you that you are young, friends may tell you to enjoy, and even your own desires will whisper that nothing urgent need be done. Yet all these voices seek only to keep you docile, to prevent you from grasping that power must be pursued now, not later. The 20s present every individual with a silent war between choice and comfort. Comfort is seductive, whispering to the young that life should be easy, that suffering can be postponed, and that small indulgences cost nothing. It promises peace, warmth, and the illusion of happiness without effort. But in reality, comfort is the most cunning form of decay. It does not kill swiftly like misfortune, it weakens slowly day by day, until one is too fragile to rise against the demands of life. The man who bows to comfort in his 20s is a man who offers up his strength as a sacrifice to mediocrity. Choice, on the other hand, is heavy, often brutal, and rarely sweet. To choose discipline over distraction, labor over idleness, solitude over shallow company, is to suffer deliberately when others escape into comfort. This suffering feels like loss at first. You will envy those who appear to live freely, who laugh loudly in drunken halls, who spend without restraint, who pursue fleeting pleasures without shame. Yet beneath the surface, their souls are withering, their will softening, their capacity for greatness dissolving into ash. The one who embraces choice in these years builds iron within himself. He suffers in the present, but he suffers with purpose, and that purpose grows into power. Comfort destroys not through direct assault, but by disarming the will. It whispers, "Do it tomorrow." And tomorrow becomes a week, then a month, then a year. A man chained by comfort cannot imagine sacrifice because he has trained himself to avoid it. His body grows accustomed to weakness, his mind addicted to ease, and his spirit unwilling to endure hardship. And when the inevitable storms of life come, illness, betrayal, poverty, failure, he collapses because he has built no strength in times of peace. He mistook peace for permanence, never realizing it was only an interlude before the next trial. To choose discomfort is to rehearse for life's cruelty. The man who willingly wakes before the sun, who learns when others sleep, who denies indulgence when it beckons, becomes unshakable. While others are slaves to their appetites, he masters his own. When the world tests him, he does not falter because he has chosen struggle in advance. Discipline becomes his shield, and endurance his sword. In his 20s, while others are busy fleeing the harshness of reality, he has sharpened himself against it. And when power, wealth, or influence appear, he alone is prepared to claim them. The irony of comfort is that it sells itself as freedom, yet it is the most perfected form of enslavement. The man who lives for ease believes he is free to indulge whenever he desires, yet in truth he has become bound to his own weakness. He cannot rise early even when he wishes to, he cannot delay gratification even when necessity demands it, he cannot face silence without craving distraction. He has chained himself, but he celebrates the chains because they shine with the false light of pleasure. The man of choice sees these same chains for what they are, tools of control. To reject them is painful, but in rejecting them he walks as a free man, and the world bends differently before him. Every empire, every dynasty, every man of influence has been shaped by the choices made in obscurity, long before the world ever knew their name. Greatness does not announce itself in the 20s with trumpets and acclaim. It is forged in the unseen hours, when a man refuses comfort to pursue a greater end. No crown has ever been earned by the lazy. No throne has ever been given to the indulgent. Comfort builds only slaves, and slaves are ruled, not rulers. The tragedy of comfort is that it disguises itself as kindness. Friends will invite you into comfort, urging you to relax, to waste, to join them in mediocrity. They will call you arrogant when you choose discipline. They will call you obsessed when you deny distraction. They will resent you for exposing their own weakness. Society itself conspires to keep the young entangled in comfort, because comfortable men do not threaten the order of things. A man addicted to comfort will never rise to challenge authority, never dream of building his own dominion, never dare to impose his will upon the world. He will remain a consumer, obedient, predictable, and easily discarded. But the one who chooses discomfort, who prefers pain with purpose to ease without meaning, becomes something different. He becomes dangerous because he cannot be bribed by pleasures that control others. He cannot be softened by luxuries that enslave weaker men. He does not need constant approval, nor does he fear the loneliness that comes with walking apart. He stands ready to outlast, to outwork, and to outthink all who surrounded themselves with cushions of comfort. In this way, the 20s become his proving ground, and he rises while others are still asleep in their illusions. Choice is not simply a matter of discipline in one action, but a principle that divides lives into two paths. On one side lies the pursuit of comfort, temporary happiness, endless distraction, eventual regret. On the other side lies the pursuit of mastery, temporary pain, constant resistance, eventual command. Every decision in the 20s pushes you further down one path or the other, though few realize it until it is too late. Those who treat choices lightly will find themselves shackled by the accumulation of small concessions. Those who treat choices as weapons will find themselves building an arsenal of strength that multiplies with time. Thus, the 20s demand clarity. To embrace comfort is to accept defeat disguised as leisure. To embrace choice is to carve a path of power through sacrifice and suffering, knowing that comfort enjoyed later, on your own terms, is worth infinitely more than comfort seized now at the cost of your future. When most people in their 20s hear the word wealth, their thoughts run immediately to money. They imagine salaries, luxuries, possessions, and the visible symbols that others can envy. This is the simplest definition of wealth, and also the weakest. Money is necessary, but money alone is fragile. It can be stolen, devalued, wasted, or lost overnight through misfortune or foolishness. True wealth in the 20s is not what can be counted in coins, but what cannot be seen at all. Invisible wealth: reputation, alliances, knowledge, discipline, and influence. Outlasts money, multiplies power, and sets apart those destined to command from those doomed to be commanded. Invisible wealth begins with reputation. In youth, when you have little material power, reputation is your currency. How you are spoken of in rooms where you are not present determines whether doors open or remain closed. The careless young man believes reputation is unimportant, that his actions are isolated and without consequence. But every word, every act, every demonstration of character builds a record that others use to measure him. To be known as reliable, disciplined, intelligent, or cunning is worth more than any wage earned in an ordinary job. Reputation once established can summon opportunities that money could never buy, and it can also destroy a man if neglected. Those who waste their 20s in scandal, unreliability, or weakness soon find that no amount of wealth can erase the stains of their name. Alliances are another form of invisible wealth. A solitary man, no matter how strong, is limited, but the one who surrounds himself with allies, mentors, and loyal companions multiplies his strength. In your 20s, alliances are not built by chasing the powerful with empty flattery, but by offering value, by showing seriousness, by proving yourself useful in ways others cannot ignore. Invisible wealth is the ability to call upon others when needed, to have networks that defend your interests, to have people who speak in your favor when you are not there to defend yourself. Those who understand this principle in youth invest not only in themselves but in the cultivation of relationships that will bear fruit for decades. Knowledge is perhaps the most underestimated form of invisible wealth. It is not the shallow knowledge that fills school books and is forgotten after examinations, but the deep, strategic knowledge that can be applied to gain advantage. To understand human nature, to grasp history's patterns, to master the principles of persuasion, finance, or leadership. These are treasures no one can steal. The man who fills his 20s with distractions will enter his 30s ignorant, and ignorance makes him vulnerable to every scheme of the cunning. But the one who uses his time to study deliberately, to observe carefully, to learn relentlessly becomes a weapon. When others argue from emotion, he sees through to the core. When others stumble blindly, he navigates with precision. Knowledge cannot be seen or flaunted easily, but its power radiates silently, drawing respect and influence without needing to be announced. Discipline, too, is invisible wealth. No one can display it like a jewel, but its presence can be felt in everything a man does. Discipline is the foundation of reliability, endurance, and respect. In the 20s, when distractions are endless and temptations constant, discipline separates those who build from those who decay. A disciplined man can be trusted to deliver, to withstand difficulty, to master himself. Others may not praise him openly, but they will notice his consistency, and consistency is rare enough to be revered. This form of wealth grows silently, unnoticed, but it positions a man to seize greater rewards when the time comes. Influence is the highest form of invisible wealth, and it is built slowly, piece by piece, upon the other foundations. Influence is the power to shape decisions, to sway opinions, to alter the direction of events without force. In your 20s, it may seem distant, but its seeds are sown early. Influence is created by how you speak, how you present yourself, how you make others feel in your presence. It is cultivated by your reputation, alliances, knowledge, and discipline until you become a person whose opinion carries weight, whose approval is sought, and whose disapproval is feared. Influence cannot be purchased like gold. It must be earned and preserved through cunning, foresight, and strength. The tragedy is that most in their 20s ignore invisible wealth entirely. They spend their energy chasing what is visible: clothes, status symbols, parties, shallow recognition, while neglecting what actually builds enduring power. They want to be admired now rather than respected later, and so they trade permanent assets for temporary illusions. But admiration fades quickly, while the man who has built invisible wealth rises steadily, often unnoticed, until one day he stands far above his peers who once mocked him. The world does not reward those who burn brightly for a moment and vanish. It rewards those who construct silent, unshakable foundations. Invisible wealth is dangerous precisely because it cannot be measured by the masses. Most will not understand why one man commands attention without demanding it, why opportunities flow toward him, why his life seems to bend to his will. They will attribute it to luck or chance, never realizing that it was carefully built in obscurity, brick by brick, in the very years they wasted. A man who invests in invisible wealth makes himself irreplaceable. He cannot be easily discarded because his value runs deeper than appearances. Those who understand this principle in their 20s must accept that the rewards are not immediate. Unlike money, which can be spent the moment it is earned, invisible wealth accumulates silently and pays dividends later. This delay tempts many to abandon the path, to seek quicker gratification. But the patient, the cunning, the disciplined, these are the ones who reap the greatest harvest because they have invested in what endures. Money may vanish in a crisis, but reputation endures. Comfort may decay, but knowledge sharpens. Distractions fade, but alliances remain, and influence once secured multiplies with time. In the 20s, a man stands at the threshold of two forces that will shape his entire life: discipline and decay. Discipline is the silent architect of power, while decay is the quiet disease that corrodes it. Discipline is not glamorous, it is thankless, often invisible, and rarely celebrated. It requires one to deny pleasures, to impose order upon chaos, and to restrain the very impulses that feel most natural. Decay, on the other hand, arrives effortlessly. It requires no effort, no sacrifice, no thought. One need only indulge, postpone, and surrender to the smallest weaknesses, and decay begins its work. The frightening truth is that both forces grow in silence, and by the time their effects are visible, the decade is already gone. Discipline in your 20s is like planting roots deep into the soil. It is not seen above ground, and others may even mock the effort because nothing appears to grow. Yet in time, storms arrive, and the man of discipline stands firm, unshaken, while those who never built roots are torn apart. Decay functions in the opposite way. It begins unnoticed, a small surrender here, a minor indulgence there. It feels harmless at first, even pleasurably. It spreads. The man who avoids responsibility once avoids it again. The man who skips discipline today finds it easier to skip tomorrow. Habits, once formed, are chains, and decay forges them tighter with every repetition. The harshness of life does not wait for a man to be ready. Trials, betrayals, losses, and demands arrive without warning. A man without discipline will face them with trembling hands, because he has trained himself for weakness. He has lived as if life were merciful, forgetting that mercy is not promised to anyone. The disciplined man, however, treats every day of his 20s as preparation for war. He imposes order on himself so that when disorder comes from outside, he is not destroyed by it. His will is hardened like iron precisely because he has chosen the path of resistance when others chose ease. Decay thrives most dangerously in the illusion of youth. The young body recovers quickly, the young mind adapts easily, and so men convince themselves that excess will cost nothing. Nights of indulgence, mornings of laziness, years of distraction appear harmless because youth can mask their consequences. But the body betrays them as years pass, the mind slows, and opportunities no longer wait. Suddenly, what once was effortless now feels impossible, and the years of decay reveal themselves in full. By then, discipline cannot be built quickly, it is the work of years. The man who chose decay finds himself unfit for battle just as life demands it most. Discipline is also the key to mastery. Every skill worth possessing, every craft that commands respect, requires long hours of repetition, patience, and persistence. The world will not hand power to the man who practices when convenient. It hands power to the one who practices when exhausted, who sharpens his edge when others dull theirs in idleness. Decay mocks mastery by offering distraction in its place. Why labor to perfect a skill when one can seek cheap pleasures? Why study when one can indulge? The weak man believes he can always return to discipline later, but mastery does not forgive delay. The one who begins early, who disciplines himself relentlessly, commands the field before others have even arrived. There is also a moral dimension to discipline, not in the sense of virtue, but in the sense of strength. Discipline builds respect, both from others and from oneself. The man who commands himself gains the right to command others, for leadership begins within. Decay erodes respect, for a man who cannot master his own impulses cannot be trusted to master anything greater. He may hide behind excuses, but the truth is visible to all. He is weak, and weakness invites domination. Others may tolerate him, but they will never follow him. The disciplined man, even if harsh, is respected because he demonstrates control in a world ruled by chaos. Decay often disguises itself as freedom, but it is nothing more than surrender in disguise. A man who rejects discipline claims he is free to do as he pleases, but he is not free at all. He is ruled by appetite, enslaved by comfort, dependent on indulgence. True freedom is the result of discipline, the ability to choose without being bound by weakness, the ability to say no when temptation calls, the ability to act with strength while others are paralyzed. The undisciplined man is a slave pretending to be free, while the disciplined man is free precisely because he has made himself his own master. The 20s are the decisive decade where this battle is most intense. Discipline feels most costly in youth because the world constantly tempts the young with distraction. Friends will encourage indulgence, society will praise pleasure, and even one's own body will crave ease. To resist this requires uncommon strength, and that strength is what sets apart those who rise from those who sink. The disciplined man is mocked in the moment, but envied in the years to come. The decayed man is celebrated in the moment, but forgotten, or pitied, when his weakness catches up to him. Decay is not dramatic at first. It is subtle, creeping, and almost invisible. It begins with excuses: just this once. I deserve a break. Everyone else is doing it. Discipline is not dramatic either. It is quiet, often unrecognized and lonely. But over years, both reveal their true nature. One produces a man of steel, hardened, feared, respected. The other produces a man of dust, easily scattered, powerless, dependent on others to carry him. The choice between discipline and decay is not made in grand gestures, but in the small, daily decisions of youth that compound into destiny. Discipline builds silently, decay destroys silently, and the 20s determine which force triumphs. The one who understands this does not treat any decision lightly, for he knows that each act of discipline strengthens his fortress, and each act of decay chips away at its foundation. And when the fortress is needed, when the world delivers its inevitable storm, it will be too late to build what should have been built in the beginning.